Oklahoma has long been known as one of the areas with a very high population of wild hogs. Tracks appear across grassy fields, along forest trails, and even around the edges of farms. With a careful look, it is not difficult to see that they have been active here for many consecutive nights. That is why we expected today's trap inspection to produce very promising results. But reality turned out to be completely different. Even though signs of activity were everywhere, most of the traps produced only modest results. What was causing the sounders of wild hogs to continuously avoid locations that seemed almost perfect? That was the question we set out to answer. The first trap was placed in a grassy field east of the forest, where there were plenty of fresh tracks and numerous travel routes crossing the pasture. After waiting through the night, we returned before sunrise. The signs around the area showed that the hogs had been there during the night. However, the results were far lower than everyone had expected. It left the entire team wondering whether the hogs had changed their travel routes, or whether they had simply become more cautious around the traps. Not wanting to jump to conclusions after only one inspection, we decided to continue monitoring other locations around the area. If this was only a coincidence, the next traps would soon provide the answer. The next trap was positioned right along the edge of a farm, where wild hogs frequently come out to feed after dark. But once again, the results were not what we had hoped for. Despite the many signs of activity from the sounder, only a single hog entered the trap area. Leaving the farm behind, we moved onto a trail running through the forest. This is a natural travel route for wild hogs and was considered one of the most promising locations. Yet after checking the trap, the outcome was almost unchanged. Once again, only a single hog appeared within the trap zone. At this point, the feeling of doubt became increasingly difficult to ignore. In the grassland south of the forest, the situation was no better. Freshly rooted patches of soil proved that the hogs had passed through not long before. But when the trap was checked, the result was still limited to a single hog. It seemed that the hogs were moving in several smaller groups, rather than gathering together as we had predicted. The next trap was relocated to a recently harvested cornfield. This area is normally very attractive to wild hogs because of the grain left behind after harvest. Everyone hoped that this time would be different. Yet the results repeated the same pattern as the previous locations. The patience of the entire team continued to be tested. After a series of locations that produced only limited results, we began to think that this would be a rather uneventful inspection trip. until we returned to the first trap. The trap in the grassy field east of the forest had been adjusted and reset. This inspection brought more encouraging signs. The tracks around the area showed that multiple hogs had returned during the night. It was also the first trap to produce results far better than the earlier inspections, demonstrating that choosing the right timing and the correct travel route of the hogs can make a significant difference. After many rounds of waiting, a positive sign had finally appeared. The final trap was placed deep inside the forest, where fresh tracks led into thicker cover. When we returned to inspect it, we noticed that the hogs had gradually moved deeper into the woods rather than continuing their activity in the open fields and grasslands as before. That also explained why many of the traps positioned in the outer areas produced only modest results. Each inspection provided another clue about how the hogs changed their travel routes over time and in response to environmental conditions. It was also a reminder that in nature, the places with the most signs are not always the places that deliver the results you expect. The day's inspections came to an end with plenty to think about. Wild hogs are still extremely abundant throughout this area of Oklahoma, but accurately predicting the travel routes of an entire sounder remains a constant challenge. Perhaps it is that very unpredictability that makes every return trip to check the traps feel filled with anticipation and a different kind of surprise each time. 2 days ago, the wild boar sweep was more successful than expected. The number of boars captured reached into the hundreds. But it didn't end there. The lead boars, cunning, alert, and incredibly sly, were still able to evade capture in almost unbelievable ways. I knew I had to use a different approach to catch them. A series of traps had to be set. The first trap was placed right at the edge of the forest where I knew it would pass. As night fell, the lead boar appeared alone, moving very slowly, constantly stopping to sniff and observe with extreme caution. It stepped forward, then backed away several times, making me think it would leave. But in a single moment of lowered guard, it moved deep inside. The trapdoor slammed shut decisively. Instantly, it reacted violently, repeatedly ramming into the metal bars, making the cage shake intensely. The next trap worked exactly as expected. 2 wild boars appeared, moving slowly and cautiously. They kept stopping to sniff, but in the end, the bait still drew them inside. The moment both stepped deep enough, the trapdoor snapped shut. Immediately, they reacted violently, moving constantly inside the cage, ramming in multiple directions to find a way out. But this time, the trap held firm. Both were captured. The next morning, I returned to check each trap. From a distance, I could already hear constant noise coming from them. As I got closer, the boars inside immediately reacted, moving and slamming into the metal bars. I kept my distance, quickly observing the situation before handling each trap one by one. The next trap surprised me. When I checked, it was completely packed with wild boars. Not just one or two, but an entire group caught at once. They were crammed together, moving chaotically and constantly hitting the metal frame, creating a scene completely different from the previous traps. Another trap on the western edge of the forest had also been triggered, but this time only one boar was caught. As we approached, it immediately reacted strongly, constantly moving inside the cage and ramming into the metal bars. The confined space made it even more aggressive, trying every possible way to escape, but the trap held firm. The final trap was deep inside a barren part of the forest, where I didn't expect so much activity. But as I got closer, I was truly surprised. Inside were massive wild boars packed tightly together, making the trap so crowded that there was almost no space left. They moved heavily, constantly striking the metal frame, creating the feeling that the cage could be under extreme pressure at any moment.
Make a loop.
After checking all the traps, I finally let out a sigh of relief. At least the most dangerous wild boars have been brought under control. The surrounding area gradually returned to quiet, and for the first time in many days, I felt that things were temporarily under control. The first trap cage had been set the night before. One quiet night was all it took for a sounder of wild boars to follow the scent of the bait and move inside. And just as expected, the trap had been triggered. As soon as daylight arrived, we wasted no time and headed straight toward the trap location. Even from a distance, the frantic movement inside suggested the result was significant. As we approached, the scene exceeded our expectations. An entire sounder of wild boars was trapped inside, moving chaotically after spending the night confined in the cage. Without wasting time, we quickly took control of the situation, gathered all of the wild boars, and loaded them onto the truck. It was a nearly perfect start, and also a clear sign that this operation would not be an easy one. After finishing with the first trap and moving toward the second location, the sun was already high in the sky. The travel time had slowed us more than expected, But as soon as we checked the camera footage, an unexpected detail appeared. The trap had only been triggered a short time earlier. That meant one thing. The wild boars were still moving very close to us. Without hesitation, we immediately increased our pace. With the trap having been triggered so recently, everything around it was still as active as ever. The third trap cage had been triggered the previous night, and the entire event had been clearly recorded by the camera. By the time we arrived, it was already midday. The heat was becoming more intense, but even from a distance, the movement inside the trap made us stop and take a closer look. The result was truly remarkable. Inside was a large sounder of wild boars, crowded together and moving frantically after being confined for hours. The scale far exceeded anything we had seen in the first two traps. With numbers like these, the operation could not be completed quickly. We had to divide the work among ourselves and coordinate every step carefully to maintain control of the situation. It took quite a while, but eventually every wild boar inside the third trap had been dealt with, making it one of the largest results of the entire day. The fourth trap had been placed deeper in the woods, in an area with little human activity and along a route frequently used by wild boars. By the time we arrived, the afternoon was already fading and the light was beginning to weaken. But even from a distance, the result was obvious. This trap did not disappoint. Inside was an entire family group of wild boars, from fully grown adults to young piglets, all of them restless after hours of being trapped. But time was running short. We immediately got to work, coordinating quickly and efficiently to gain control of every wild boar inside. Everything had to be done decisively, because another trap was still waiting ahead and darkness was approaching fast. The fifth trap cage was not far away, but by the time we reached it, the remaining daylight had nearly disappeared. Darkness falls quickly in the Texas woods, forcing every task to be completed with greater urgency. Even from a distance, the movement inside the cage showed that it had also been triggered. There was no time to waste. We immediately moved faster and coordinated our efforts to control the situation. In the fading light, everything had to be carried out more carefully than ever. Every step was performed decisively because even a small delay could make the operation much more difficult. And by the time the final trap had been completed, darkness had fully settled across the area, bringing an end to a non-stop day of work that had begun at sunrise. When the last trap was finally finished, night had completely covered the Texas landscape. It had been a day that started before sunrise and lasted until full darkness, with hardly a single easy moment. From the damaged fields to the series of traps triggered throughout the day, everything pointed to one reality. The wild boar invasion had grown far beyond anything we had previously encountered. But at least today, we managed to stop part of it. Every trap and every successful operation means another chance for these fields to recover. Even so, as I looked toward the dark forest ahead, where signs of uncontrolled activity still remained, I knew one thing for certain. This fight is far from over.